Hello, and welcome back to 1 Minute Remaining. My name is Jack Lawrence, the host and creator of this show. Today is part 2, and the final part for now, of the story of Marcellus Williams, a man who has been sentenced to death by the state of Missouri for the 1998 murder of 42-year-old Felicia Gale. It's a crime that he has not only always maintained he's innocent of, but one that DNA evidence says that he didn't commit. In our previous episode, police had got what they believed to be enough evidence in which to formally charge Marcellus with the murder. They turn up to prison, where he's serving time for a separate incident, and tell him that he's being charged with the murder of Felicia Gale.
Obviously, when they first came to you about this crime, it was almost a year after it had happened. So I'm assuming you had no way of knowing where you were when this actual crime took place.
Well, I know that I was over my grandfather's house, this is summertime, with my little cousins, I believe my son, I was keeping my son during that time. I think they was on summer vacation.
Yeah.
And my son, he was like going on 8 years old, but, he always been big for his age, but yeah. And I mean, my little cousins probably at that time was about 9. Something like around that time, about that age, something like that. But yeah, I remember being at my grandfather's house.
So the prosecution, as we know, have 2 witnesses. Questionable witnesses, but witnesses nonetheless. One being Henry Cole, a distant relative of Marcellus's, who was incarcerated with him for a while. He tells police that Marcellus confessed to him that he had committed the murder. Then there's a former partner of Marcellus's called Laura Azzaro. She tells detectives that he had also admitted to the crime to her, and she in fact directed police to some of the victim's missing belongings, one of which was a laptop that she said that Marcellus had sold just after the murder.
So what sort of case were the attorneys trying to build in your defence? What were they bringing to the table to try and combat this?
Nothing for real. They, right now, these 2 attorneys, Joseph Green and Christian McGraw, both of them, they are judges now. Right now today, they are both judges.
Yeah.
And, they it wasn't no comeback. And one of them was Christian McGraw. He kept almost to the point where he was arguing with me, trying to get me to withdraw my speedy trial motion, because at one point they couldn't keep up with Henry Cole and they couldn't find him. You know what I'm saying? He was like disappearing on them. The prosecutor was giving him money and coming to find out and doing this and doing that for him. And he was going to New York and all these type of things. And they wanted, Christian McGraw was trying his best to get me to withdraw my speedy trial motion. You know what I'm saying? I was putting pressure on the state to come on with it. You know what I mean? So yeah. Eventually I actually withdrew my motion for speedy trial, which I should have never did that. You know what I'm saying? But I live and learn,
So what Marcellus is saying here is that he'd requested a speedy trial. This in fact makes up one of the 27 amendments in the United States Constitution. In fact, it sits at number 6 and states, "In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favour, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defence." In English, that simply means if a defendant announces that he is ready for trial and files a request for a speedy trial, then the court shall set the case for trial as soon as reasonably possible thereafter. So the advantages to having a speedy trial are quite a few. You can obviously recall events a lot easier, as can your witnesses. It allows your attorney to compile recent evidence. Everything's just fresher, as opposed to waiting years to going to trial and memories becoming faded and possibly evidence getting lost, as we'll hear very soon. And possibly the biggest advantage is that it gives the prosecution less time to prepare. What Marcellus is saying is that the prosecution were in fact at one point having issues with one of their key witnesses. It would appear Mr. Cole was giving them a bit of a runaround. And had Marcellus not waived his right to that speedy trial, as his attorney had said he should, then there is every possibility one of the state's key witnesses may not have made it to testify. So it was off to trial, and like with all trials in the US, the first port of call is jury selection.
I mean, would you consider the jury that presided over your case, would you call them a jury of your peers?
No way.
12 jurors are selected randomly from the jury pool, a list of potential jurors compiled from voter registration records of people living in the federal district. When selecting the jury, the prosecutor and defense attorney may not discriminate against any group of people. For example, the judge will not allow them to select only men or only women. A jury should represent all types of people, races and cultures. Both lawyers are allowed to ask questions about their potential biases and may excuse jurors from service. Each side is allowed to excuse certain potential jurors without providing a reason by using a limited number of preemptory challenges. The prosecution in this case would remove a total of 6 jurors. And what one thing do you think all these jurors had in common? I'll give you one guess. Yes, that's right. They were all African Americans, and this left just one black jury member among 11 whites.
You know what I'm saying? I had one black person on my jury, and the rest of them, they were white women and white men. All of them was older than me. You know what I'm saying? I'm like 20, probably about. I'm still in my. Well, at that time, I'm like, I'm probably 31 at that time. Every single person on my jury was older than me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And even the one black guy. You know what I'm saying? But yeah. It's no way those was jurors were my peers at all. Period. That's just something that they say. That only applies. That really only applies to, you know what I'm saying, people who are the Caucasian and the whites. You know what I'm saying? That applies to them because that don't apply to black people or Hispanics or anybody like that. Or other non-white people in the United States. That's a reality.
So the trial is underway, and the prosecution have their 2 key witnesses. Let's look at these 2 witnesses, who seem to have some pretty damning evidence to suggest that Marcellus could be guilty of this crime. Firstly, there's Henry Cole. Now, it's important to know that at the time of his testimony to police, he himself was facing some more hefty charges and more prison time. So, with a little help from police on these charges and the promise of some easy money, it seemed he was only too happy to help. In fact, he almost says as much while on the stand, as he admits he would never have come forward had it not been for the reward money that was offered. What the court would never find out is that his own family had written sworn affidavits that he had in fact bragged about the fact he had set this all up and that he was about to make a ton of money claiming the reward. His own son also wrote an affidavit to state that his father told him he had a caper going on and something big was coming his way. Not only this, but he said his father had made many false allegations against other people and had been doing it for decades. Other inmates that were in prison at the time of all of this happening had also given sworn affidavits that they were approached by detectives and others to see if they would corroborate Henry's story and also say that Marcellus had confessed to the crime. But they all refused to do so. Then we have Marcellus's former girlfriend. She was facing numerous charges for solicitation as she was working as a prostitute at the time. And just like Henry Cole, there were affidavits written against her by 2 of her friends, Edward Hobson and Colleen Bailey. They had both stated that Asaro admitted that she set up Marcellus to get the reward money to feed her cocaine habit. They also said that she was a known police informant who was always lying and informing on others to get herself out of trouble, and she'd been doing it for years. What about the evidence from the crime scene itself? Well, as we know, there were bloody shoe prints that were found. These not only did not match the shoes Marcellus was wearing when he was arrested. Fair enough, you could say, well, he might have been wearing a different pair of shoes. Well, he may have been, but this doesn't mean anything because the size of the print did not match Marcellus at all. So that's out the window. Then there were the hair samples found at the crime scene, both pubic and head hair. They were tested and not only came back as not a match for the victim or her husband, but no, they were also not a match for Marcellus Williams. What about the fingerprints? Fingerprint evidence spread across the crime scene, bloody fingerprints everywhere. That has to be one of the biggest pieces of evidence that they have. Well, the police stated that none of the fingerprints were of good enough quality to be able to make a decent match. And then something weird happens. The fingerprints disappear before the defense team is able to have them looked at by their own expert.
You know, the whole way through this trial, obviously you knew the possibility, the outcome of this, but were you confident that you would be found not guilty because of the lack of evidence?
No. When I started seeing different things that was going against me and how the judge was reacting and making rulings against the attorneys and what the prosecutor was doing and stuff like that, and I seen all the different stuff that was going on, I was like, they trying to, put this on me. So I was like, it's a possibility that I will, be found guilty, irregardless, So yeah, because my attorneys didn't attack the DNA, they didn't attack none of the evidence, like the handling of like the shoe print and all that stuff disappearing and all this stuff, So I was like, yeah. So I was just preparing myself for that, And then I know I wasn't up under no preconceived notions of who I was dealing with. I know who I'm dealing with, and I know the history, of the United States judicial system, you know what I mean?
Marcellus's defense attorneys would focus on the fact that none of the evidence found at the scene linked Marcellus to it in any way. The hairs found, no match. Bloody footprints, no match. The blood and skin found under Felicia's nails, not a match. Fingerprints, well, of course, we'll never know. But we still, of course, have the issue of the laptop and the items that were found in Marcellus's car. Well, the person who bought the laptop, Glenn Roberts, was brought to trial to testify. And he indeed got up on the stand and said that yes, he was sold the laptop by Marcellus Williams. He would also go on to say, Marcellus stated when selling the laptop to him that he'd got it from his girlfriend, Lara Azaro. However, the jury would never hear this part of Mr. Roberts' testimony. Why? The judge would not allow them to hear it, citing the hearsay ruling.
So the trial lasts for 2 weeks.
A little over 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks, a little bit over 2 weeks. I would say close to 20 days, possibly.
And do you remember how long the jury took to deliberate?
They didn't take no time. I think they took maybe a couple of hours, I would say. Jury was all the way against me, They was like, at one, when they was being questioned, some of them, they was like, why even having a trial? It's like, basically, what sentence to get? I remember one of the doing the voir dire, I remember one of them saying that, but I don't think that person stayed on the jury, but still they influencing the other jurors when they hear stuff like this,
So, on the basis of testimony from two witnesses, whose testimony, might I add, was significantly different and didn't match the crime scene evidence, the jury returned the verdict of guilty, and Marcellus Williams is sentenced to death.
So after they find you guilty, what's going through your mind after that?
Just fight, Just don't give up, Keep doing what you can. And I end up going to, of course, I was already in prison, since I ended up going back and had to come to Potosi because that's where they house the death row inmates at. So I was at MSP at first in 2001. Once I got found guilty, Because at that time I already had a typewriter. I was doing a lot of my pretrial motions on my own, because I was fighting the 2 robbery cases, and now I got to fight this murder case. At that time, I didn't know on appeal that you get 2 attorneys, even on your appeal process, doing the murder, doing the death penalty case. I didn't know that then. I found that out later. But still, during that time, I still was doing what I could to help my attorneys on appeal and things like that. And I had opposition even in that. You know what I'm saying? I had to, combat attorneys, even on the appeal process. You know what I mean? My mind was to fight. I wasn't, everybody looking at me, pointing the finger at me or whatever, but I still, was focused. I never, gave up, even to now. This is my 3rd execution date, and I'm still, focused on, doing whatever I can and use as a means I can to, fight this situation.
Marcellus is shipped from his current prison to Potosi Correctional Center. It's a Missouri Department of Corrections prison located in the unincorporated Washington County, Missouri. The facility currently houses 800 death row, maximum security and high-risk male inmates. 61 executions were carried out by lethal injection at the Potosi Correctional Center between April 1989 and April 2005, until they were moved off-site to a different location. Death row prisoners are now housed at Potosi until shortly before their scheduled execution.
From what I understand, incarceration on the row is definitely a lot different to normal incarceration. What was it like for you adjusting to that scenario?
To be quite honest, Potosi Corrections, Missouri is like really different when it comes to death row inmates. The death row inmates in Missouri in Potosi Corrections Center, they mingle with population, with the regular inmates. An inmate can have 5 years, and this person could be your cellie.
Right.
The person can have 10 years or a life sentence. So it's like, before I even got here, the Missouri death row inmates, they had went through this lawsuit or something. They ended up having a what they call a consent decree. And that allowed them to mingle with other people in population generally. So it really wasn't no big thing other than the stigma of this person on death row, that person on death row. You know what I'm saying? Being able to, a stigma about who's on death row, who's not.
Right.
But it really wasn't no different, you know what I'm saying, than being incarcerated somewhere else.
So you weren't separated from anyone and doing like 23 and 1, locked up?
No, you know what I'm saying? Like, until you get an actual date, an execution date, then they take you off the hill, and right now in the Missouri got it like they give you like 120 days. And they put you in, like right now I'm in the cell by myself. I have all my property. I got this cell phone. I'm talking to you. And then, we got tablets now, you know what I'm saying? So yeah. I can talk through the tablet if I want to, or I got my TV and whatever else, you know what I'm saying? And that's for 120 days. And this is my 3rd time being in this status, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, until then, before then, you out in population, mingling with everybody else.
Out of all of the items that were tested from the crime scene that day, the one that was never tested initially was the murder weapon itself. The knife that was recovered from the neck of the victim was never tested for DNA at the time of this crime. During the trial, Marcellus's defense would ask for continuances in order to be able to conduct further testing on items, such as the knife. But each time they put a request to the court, the judge would deny them. However, decades later, that knife was tested, and the results came back, excluding Marcellus Williams, meaning there was no DNA that matched him on that murder weapon.
I want to say it was before 2016, my lawyers, at that time, my lawyers was just Kent Gibson and Larry Comp. And like I say, Larry Comp now, he has since became the head of the capital litigation division of the Federal Public Defender System. But he was just my attorney. When he was just regular my attorney, him and Kent Gibson, they was like, hey, you know what I'm saying, we want to do this DNA, you know what I'm saying? I was like, yes. You know what I'm saying? They was like, you okay with that? I was like, yes. So it was before 2016, but I think they ended up doing it in 2016, something like that. But yeah, they was the first ones to suggest, you know what I'm saying, to actually, you know, challenge that, you know what I'm saying, or do a DNA to try to get excluded or test anything that was, you know, that wasn't tested at trial because, you know, their prosecutor, he kept on saying, trying to convince the jury, you know, this case, I know has nothing to do with DNA. So, you know, they try to put that right out front. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
So when you got that news that this DNA testing was done and it came back and it excluded you from, you know, being a contributor, surely you must have thought, well, you know, there's the slam dunk. That's it. You know, this is going to be taken back to court. I'm going to be exonerated of this crime. And, you know, you've already served, as you said, over 20 years, which is what you would have served on your other case. So I'm assuming you would have been positive that you were about to be exonerated and sent home straight away.
No, I didn't think that because I done seen it happen to too many people. I done seen people have DNA that excluded them, and they still spend many, many years incarcerated, still fighting to get out. I done seen it happen over and over and over and over. Before my case even existed, before, you know, I had the DNA, you know what I'm saying, because I do a lot of reading. I keep up on, I'm abreast for a lot of things that's going on, especially with the legal system, right? So yeah, I wasn't too jump the gun with things like that. I just was like, okay, now the next step, and then the next thing, then the next step, like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Until I'm actually out, until I'm actually walking through the courtroom and I'm finna go out free, then that's when it'll be more of a realization to me, because I know who I'm dealing with. You know what I'm saying? I have no preconceived notions about the judicial system in the United States. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't have that thought, not once.
As Marcellus has stated, just because there is this newfound DNA evidence that excluded him from the murder weapon, it did not mean that he was free to leave. In fact, in August of 2017, he was scheduled for execution.
If the state of Missouri has its way, Marcellus Williams will be executed today. He is inside this prison south of St. Louis, waiting to be executed by lethal injection.
Just hours away from being killed by lethal injection, the then governor of Missouri would intervene.
The Missouri governor issued a last-minute stay of execution for death row prisoner Marcellus Williams, only hours before he was slated to be put to death Tuesday night. The stay of execution came after DNA found on the murder weapon did not match Williams, but instead matched another man.
Signing an executive order postponing the date. The governor would assemble a board of inquiry to thoroughly investigate the case and review all the evidence that had been presented at the trial. The board was also tasked with reviewing the newly found DNA evidence and any other pertinent evidence to which the jury may not have had access. The order granted the board the authority to demand testimony and information and required it to keep its proceedings and all collected information confidential. The executive order clarified that the execution would be postponed until the governor had decided whether Mr. Williams should be granted mercy based on the board's findings. However, it is unclear if any report has ever been issued. Mr. Williams' legal team never received a report, and the governor dissolved the board without giving any indication that he had in fact received a recommendation, and if so, what it was. At the beginning of this year, St. Louis County prosecuting attorney Wesley Bell would file a court motion to vacate the conviction of Marcellus Williams, stating, and I quote, "We are confident that any full and fair process will lead to the inevitable conclusion that Mr. Williams is innocent and his conviction must be overturned." This is the same prosecutor who also filed to have Christopher Dunn's case overturned, as well as a number of other cases that predecessors from his office put behind bars.
St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney Wesley Bell has filed a motion to overturn the conviction of Marcellus Williams. Williams has been on death row for more than 20 years for the murder of Felicia Gale.
However, even with all of this happening in the background, on June 4th of this year, the Missouri Supreme Court scheduled Marcellus Williams to be executed on September the 24th, 2024 at 6 p.m. Why? Well, Marcellus says these are apparently two separate situations. However, as soon as the judge schedules the hearing to look at Marcellus's case and the DNA evidence, because yes, at this stage still no court has so far been willing to hear this evidence, which has been reviewed and analysed by 3 renowned DNA experts who have all concluded that Mr. Williams is not the source of the DNA on that knife. Once the judge sets the hearing, Marcellus says that will automatically halt the execution date.
You know, Missouri Supreme Court, they issue a warrant Tuesday, but that doesn't have any bearing upon what the prosecutor has done. I'm still waiting on a hearing from the judge up under that statute 547.031 that deals with, vacating a person's sentence based upon DNA evidence or erroneous convictions, whatever it may be. So, what Prosecutor Wesley Bell did out from St. Louis County Circuit Attorney, that's still going on. So we're seeking a hearing now from the judge. The judge, we don't know really why the judge haven't set a hearing even before they did this. But those two things are separate, even though they kind of connected, but they're separate. A lot of people you have to understand the law, to understand the separateness. So yeah, even though I have a pending death sentence as far as the scheduled death execution date, but I still had this thing going on with Wesley Bell that he did initiated in my behalf. But the thing is about the judge setting the hearing. You know what I mean? That's the thing. Once the judge set the hearing, that'll automatically, halt this situation.
Right, okay. So for some reason, the judge is dragging his feet on setting a time to have this hearing.
Yeah, for whatever reason, Wesley Bell, backed by a pro bono law firm that does wrongful convictions, they filed the actual motion up on the Missouri statute RSMO up on the 547.031 the end of February, around about the 26th or 27th, somewhere in that area. The judge, for some reason, the first judge, he recused himself. The second judge, for some reason, just haven't set the hearing yet. So, yeah, that's what we're waiting on. But in the meantime, my lawyers, of course, I got various lawyers, but they have filed a motion to squash the warrant based upon the post-conviction remedy that I have still pending, so yeah.
It's a waiting game.
Yeah, it's a waiting game, so you have to have, just use the means that's available to you, you know what I mean? So, they have means that they use, you and your lawyers, y'all have to use those means that's available to you, and, God willing, it'll be in your favor, A lot of people, many people, it's not in their favor, you know what I'm saying? But when you do have something that you can actually, go on to use to assist yourself in regards to getting, you know what I'm saying, the remedy that you desire, then you just have to be patient. Of course, it's a waiting game because you have attorney generals, etc. Even when they see that it ain't even no reason for them to really oppose it, they'll still oppose it. And they'll, just like they did in Lamar Johnson case, and they did it in Kevin Strickland case.
Yeah.
And now they have pending this other guy named, I don't know if you've been keeping up with Christopher Dunn.
Yeah, I just spoke to Christopher. I've been speaking to Christopher for a couple of months, and I spoke to him just prior to his latest hearing that went before the judge. Yeah. And I just shake my head at the arguments that are supposedly being made by this Attorney General and their legal team, when you've got a prosecutor who's sitting there saying there is not enough evidence for this man to have been found guilty. Like, we believe in his innocence. The person who it's his job to put people in prison is saying this man should not be in prison, and how they can still fight that is just incredible.
Yeah, that's the way that's the way democracy works. You know what I'm saying? The old democracy.
Yeah, democracy. So, yeah. What a terribly loose term that is.
Since being officially handed his date of execution, Marcellus has been moved from general population to a single-man cell, where he has everything he needs within it: toilet, shower, bed, TV, and books. He did have a neighbour, a man we mentioned in the first episode.
Where you are housed now at the moment, are you by yourself or is there other people waiting on dates for execution?
Yeah, it's a guy next door. He got a date for next Tuesday. His name is Dave Hauser.
Happening today is Missouri's latest execution. David Hosier is scheduled to die by lethal injection for killing a couple in Jefferson City in 2009. Governor Mike Parson has already turned down a clemency request. Hosier maintains his innocence.
Basically took me up to my cell and told me that they'd set the date. And they packed me up and took me over to one house. And they at least let me say goodbye to all the guys in our wing and the guys that I knew over in B wing, over in the other half of our housing unit, which was nice of them. I got at least I got to say my farewells.
The state of Missouri has since put this man to death.
It's very quiet. Usually I'm used to a lot of noise in the background, obviously, because I get calls from where there's a lot of people around. So is that weird for you, having so much silence?
No, it's a spatial silence. It's like it's silent right now, but that's because people, they doing whatever they doing, but
right.
You have moments where it's extremely loud.
Okay.
But I'm in a one-man cell, and the cells are pretty good, big. They have the shower in the cell, the toilet, the sink, and you got but you can't hear nothing right now because the walk I'm on it's only probably about 12, 13 people on this walk. You know what I mean? So, and this walk I'm on, it's a program walk, so it's like people are going through a program. They're trying to get back out in population. But at certain points, it is still noisy, you know what I'm saying? But right now, it's just quiet.
And you said you've got your shower and everything in the same room. So how much time do you get out of the cell?
Not much. You know what I'm saying? Like they say, I haven't experienced it yet, but they said every Thursday I'll be able to actually get out the cell and go out to recreation, and I'll be able to pick somebody to come out there with me that that I know from the Hill. And but it's supposed to happen this Thursday, but it didn't happen. I talked to the deputy warden. He's talking about next Thursday. So I just take it with a grain of salt, and I believe it when it happens. You know what I mean? So yeah, I can work out in my cell though. I can just do my jumping jacks and push-ups and back arms and things like that in the cell, and then take my shower if I want to.
So you're essentially in SEG. You're in isolation, basically.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, basically.
There's obviously people in the community who would, listen to your story, and people would turn around and say, oh, well, this guy was a career criminal. He was out of prison. Why should we trust what he says?
Right.
What would your response be to those people in the world?
My response would be, if you believe in democracy and you believe in the justice system that's set up in this country, then you understand that the rule of law is supposed to govern. Irregardless of, whatever, if I was a career criminal, I didn't understand a lot of things, and whatever I was going through, those choices that I made in those other cases has absolutely nothing to do with this case here. Everything is supposed to be judged in the light in which they come and being presented to people.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a believer in democracy and you believe, in the judicial system as it's set up. Because if you don't believe, if you selective in what you believe in regards to your judicial system, then how would you have a rule of law? It would be nothing but chaos.
Yeah.
The law has to apply to everybody evenly. So everybody within context.
So who and how? If not Marcellus, then who committed the crime, and how did he come to be in possession of items from the victim's home? Well, there is a theory going around, and I'll reiterate this multiple times as we go through. This is just a theory. If you remember back to the man who bought the laptop from Marcellus Williams and who was not allowed to testify to the fact that Marcellus had told him that he got the laptop from his girlfriend, there is also apparently evidence that shows that Lara Azzaro and Henry Cole had communicated with each other prior to Henry Cole's release from prison. So based on this, there is a theory, again, just a theory, that the person who actually committed this crime may very well have been a client of Lara Azzaro, who, as we know, was working as a prostitute at the time and was living in and using Marcellus's vehicle. Maybe, just maybe, she had taken that laptop as payment. So again, the theory is that Lara Azzaro knew that she had these items from this robbery, and there was now a very sizable reward to solve it. So again, just a theory, is that she then calls Henry Cole, tells him her plan to get the reward money, and asks him to help back her up in the story against Marcellus. Of course, Lara Azzaro and Henry Cole have never been arrested, tried, or convicted for this crime. No one has, apart from Marcellus Williams. Marcellus Williams has said he was no choir boy. He was a criminal. He was a repeat offender. But he says he is no murderer. This show is not about my opinion. This show is not about me trying to prove anyone innocent or guilty. This show is about the case brought against men and women who are incarcerated across the United States. Countless people who I've spoken to that have been given death sentences. Death by incarceration. The one advantage that they have over Marcellus Williams, barring any medical episodes or violent incidents, is time. Time to try and fight for their freedom. Time to try and clear their own name. Marcellus Williams' clock is officially ticking. On September the 24th of this year, at 6 p.m, if the state of Missouri gets what they want, he will be dead. I cannot sit here and say this man is 100% innocent. How can I? I'm not an expert. However, there are plenty of experts in this case and the law, including the state's own prosecutor, who say that he is. And so, irregardless of someone's past, I don't believe anyone can say that they think an innocent man should be put to death for a crime he did not commit. If from what you've heard over the last 2 episodes you also feel the same, you can sign the Innocence Project's petition to get this stopped, so that a court can do what it is supposed to do and look at new and compelling evidence that was not presented at the time of this conviction. The link to the petition is in the show notes of this episode.
You have 1 minute remaining.
Nice meeting you, Jack. Nice meeting you.
You too, sir, and I will talk to you very soon.
All right. God
Okay.
will. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
One Minute Remaining is a Mashed Pumpkin production, created, hosted and produced by Jack Lawrence. Audio and sound design by Jack Lawrence and Dom Evans of Earsay.